So hey, here's a little follow-up review of the niche story on the table, as always, so for you to get an idea of like what the camber profile is like, and let me give you a few afterthoughts after our last few rides. But as you can see, it's got a double ender ride, and it's kind of twinish. But definitely, actually I wouldn't even say it's twinish, I'd say it's directional. And you can see, the nose here is a little different in shape than the tail, and the side cut seems to be, I'm not 100% on this, but it seems to be a little bit directional. But either way, we had no problem flipping it around and riding it switch. And this 158, such a fun board. I think I'd go for the 155 because it would just be that much easier to turn. But still, this 158 for a mid-wide, this is almost I think it's about 26 centimeter waist. And despite that, my size 9s turned this really well, really easy. It was really easy to turn in the trees, in tight spots. It wasn't that hard. It did have kind of like, especially for and I think this is a quality of it being wider, but it had this kind of, it's very hard to capture, and I had trouble figuring out a way to describe it in the initial review. But it feels like, even though it's hybrid rocker, I think the combination of just the mellow hybrid rocker profile, the extra magna traction between the feet, and the wider waist make it feel a little more locked in, especially in softer snow. So it feels like it just wants to go straight. It feels like it tracks straight. Once you lean in and break that feeling, like break that grip, it's fine and it turns each way, but it definitely has like kind of a pretty stable for a board with this kind of camber profile feel. Still, on harder conditions, it can do this a little bit, like it wants to auto spin on you, but less than a lot of hybrid rocker boards I've tried. I think it borders more on the stable side of semi-stable for the reasons I just described. But this is a champion for edge hold. If you ride in hard conditions and you're kind of more like a 10, 11, 11 and a half size boot, this niche story is a great option. It's like, it's kind of like it's not technically a good ride favorite, but it's a highly recommendable mid-wide favorite to bordering on mid-wide favorite that I think a lot of riders would like to have. Here's the base. Once again, camber profile. It's got a pretty aggressive flex but it doesn't feel like there's ever really much consequence. When it feels locked in, it feels locked in between the feet. It doesn't feel like the tip and tail want to catch an edge for you. So it feels like a really cool kind of consequence-free locked in. But that might be the best way to describe it. But all in all, this niche story is just fun, hitting the pipe. I'd rather be on a smaller version of this with a little bit more narrow waist, but it was still climbed a pipe all well. It carves pretty well. It handles speed pretty well. It pops well. It rides switch pretty well. It's just like the definition of an all-mountain board, Nothing exceptional, but everything great. And it's got a really good setback, so on powder days you really can get some easy float. So it's a nice one-board quiver for somebody who's looking for something from ice to powder. It's got that all conditions ride. It's got an all-terrain ride. The only thing I just wouldn't be too amped on this with is jibbing. But hitting kickers, hitting the pipe, very doable. Again, I probably want to be on the ether, either. If I was, taking a more all mountain freestyle approach, but if I'm looking for a one board quiver, one that I want to center up and kind of ride close to center most of the time, ride switch, enjoy the groomers, make some good carving turns, but then set it back on a powder day. This is, a top choice, especially if you're like a, 10 to an 11 and a half. You're going to have a blast with this. It's going to turn really well. Turned really easy for Jimbo, and it surprised me how it didn't feel as mid-widey as it should for my size 9 boots. It's almost a board I could get to know and really appreciate well too, even at my size 9. And another rider, size 8.5, had no problem there too.